Hello, everybody. This is Sophia Mona Lisa of the Golden Ray Center and the Rosewell Mystery School. And we are gathered here today, April 7th, which is the actual day of this new Venus morning star activation. This is actually the last activation for the morning star, which is the first of the 4 phases of the Venus synodic cycle. And we are going to be activating the Earth Star Chakra, which is the death by intent portal. This is really significant because the second phase of the Venus synodic cycle, which I will speak to a little bit more in a later slide, is the Inanna underworld phase. So this Earth Star Chakra, this death by intent portal, is the jumping off place, so to speak, as we descend into the Inanna underworld. And at today's activation, we will be activating the 21st strand of DNA. We'll be doing that at the end using our quantum quartz crystal technology. So this is where we are in the whole journey. We have started last August and come through in the morning star journey each of the chakra activations. And here we are today, April 7th. And this is where we have access to Sophia and Gaia or Mother Earth consciousness. Now you'll see here that June 4th is the resurrection seed point. That's basically the middle of the Inanna underworld phase. That's where the next strand of DNA will be activated. We know when the resurrection seed point happens because the Sun and Venus come together in the Inanna underworld. But there's some more events related to all of this that I have put on a slide, as I said, a little bit later in the presentation that I'll go through with you just to kind of keep you aligned with how things are going to be unfolding from this point forward. And then this whole slide here is going to change once we get through the Inanna underworld. You're going to see here a slide that's related to our DNA activations as we go through the evening star and the metamorphic underworld phases. So that's a whole separate slide that we will be using once we start that evening star or ascent journey. So this is where we are today, and it's super spectacular for many reasons. One is because tomorrow, believe it or not, is the next eclipse on the Aries Libra eclipse axis. It's the 4th eclipse here in this Aries Libra eclipse season, which has to do with the path of conscious equal partnership. So what's happening today at this gate activation and what's happening tomorrow are absolutely connected, especially because both events are within the window where they are being informed by the same ancient constellation and the same star. So I know things got really intense a couple of weeks ago, and we had that 3rd eclipse, which was the only lunar eclipse of all 6 of these eclipses on this Aries Libra axis. But today and tomorrow are as intense because of the intense focus from these Aries energies that are coming in. This eclipse tomorrow is going to be at 19 degrees of Aries. The gate today at 3 degrees at Aries. It's a 16-degree orb. It's a little outside of the window of what I would look to for influence, but because of that star and because of the proximity to each other on the linear timeline, they are definitely integrally connected with each other. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, and for those of you who are, as a reminder, Sophia asked me to provide a Christ Heart mentorship program that's built around all of those eclipses on the path of conscious equal partnership. And it's a self-paced program. You're not too late to join us if you're interested. And here is the link, which I will also put in the description below for more information. So let's take a look at the chart for today's gate activation.
Oh,
yeah. So we know it's happening in Aries. It's right here. There's the Venus and the moon. Right next to it, which will be tomorrow, the moon will have moved over here. This is where that eclipse point is going to happen at 19 degrees. And it just so happens that the moon and the sun are going to be at an exact, by degree and minute, an exact conjunction with the cosmic shaman, Chiron. So it's really super spectacular. And here's that star, Alpheratz. Alpheratz is the star that's informing both events. It's at about 14 degrees of Aries. So it's falling in between the gate activation and the eclipse point, maybe a little bit closer to the eclipse point. But what we see here is that the gate activation is pulling in these Aquarian frequencies of Pluto. And Pluto is in the 7th house. And so this is giving us a whole new relationship to our multi-dimensional self. And that is significant because I'm going to speak back to what happened at the root chakra activation. At the root chakra activation, it became clear to me that that activation was bridging us over from this 3D chakra system in our sacred temples, our physical bodies, to the higher octave chakra system that is what I will now be calling our crystalline body, which is a part of our multidimensional self. And so you can see here that even with this gate activation, the work, right? The work, the spiritual work that we're doing through this gate, because it's in the 10th house, the work that you're known for, is about coming into relationship, coming into the empowerment through the relationship with that higher octave chakra system of our crystalline body. And we've talked a lot about the Christ heart, and I've never really used these terms around the Christ heart before, but I will share that with you now. The Christ heart is the higher octave of the heart chakra in your 3D chakra system. So this is really significant. This is a sextile between the two of them. So they're going to be working together like BFFs, right? To support each other, mostly to support you, because remember, this is the death by intent portal. This is where we are jumping off into the Inanna underworld. And so what this is telling us is that it's going to be really significant as we go through that alchemical process of the Inanna underworld to have this new relationship emerging between our sacred temples and our crystalline temples. Really huge, because the higher octave chakras and the crystalline temples feed into and through the chakras. You could call it like a feedback system, where everything coming in from the higher densities comes through that higher octave chakra system, and then through this lower octave chakra system to manifest within our reality. And so what will we be manifesting in our reality, right? Capricorn is about self-mastery, and it's ruled by Saturnia, which has to do with manifestation. And look at this. We've got Isis representing the cosmic Sophia above, also your Atma, your monad, your higher self, your soul, your Buddhi, whatever you want to call that, your Buddha, rather. The Buddhi is the higher mind, your Buddha, and Yeshua, your inner Christ consciousness. And it's in the 6th house. So what we will be doing now that we've got this relationship emerging with the higher octave chakra system of our crystalline temple is, on a day-to-day basis, 6th house, every breath you breathe, every step you take, every thought you think, everything you do is going to be infused with the frequencies of the Sophia Christ consciousness. And it's interesting here because we know that Isis as the cosmic Sophia and Osiris as the cosmic Christ are beloveds. We also know in the mystery schools the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. So I find it fascinating that we have the cosmic Sophia above, the one divine creatrix of all life, and a manifestation of her beloved, Yeshua, the Christ consciousness within us, the Christ below. I love this. This is also speaking to this bridging effect as we're coming into more and more relationship with the greater part of ourselves. So we're seeing it showing up between these densities. And then, of course, you'll notice that they are in a square to each other, 90-degree angle. So this is a breakthrough in consciousness that is happening from this Earth Star Chakra, from this death by intent portal. And what I love about the timing of this is, as you're probably aware, we just had Easter, right? Where the Christ is resurrected, goes through the alchemical death process and is resurrected. And so this is showing that for us, that this Inanna underworld stage that we're getting ready to leap into is going to be unlike any Inanna underworld experience that we have had up to date, because it is going to be more like that which is the story of Yeshua, where we die to the human self and we resurrect the Christ self. And then finally, we have over here the Celtic horse goddess, Epona, and her medicine in Gemini, which I will speak to in a slide coming up soon. But notice that she is also making a sextile to the gate activation, like Pluto, and that they are trining each other. So this path of most allowance, this horse medicine that Epona is providing for us, is the path of most allowance for us to come into relationship with that greater part of ourself, whether you call it your crystalline self, your multidimensional self, whatever word resonates with you. So that's what's going on with the gate activation today. We've got this huge buildup of frequencies towards the eclipse point that'll be happening tomorrow. Notice that the Magdalene, the beloved of Yeshua, our inner Sophia consciousness, our inner divine wisdom, is a part of that. So again, Yeshua is a part of the gate activation, Magdalene as a part of the eclipse. We see this connection there. And here we've got Uranus and Jupiter as the closest that they've been, I believe, yet, while they've both been traveling through Taurus, making that semi-sextile to that eclipse point. And of course, you know, all of that that's happening today and will be happening tomorrow, you know, it's happening in the eternal now. This empowerment is happening now. Remember that the semi-sextile is like that sacred helpmate, the hand in the glove. And notice that they are in the 11th house. This is flipping huge for humanity, for the liberation of the consciousness of humanity, and in service to humanity. And the whole point of an eclipse is to bring humanity back into alignment with our evolutionary path. And so all of this is encoded right here. Jupiter and Taurus creating the space within each of us individually, within the consciousness of humanity, to be able to receive these higher frequencies of the eclipse, of this gate activation and this 21st strand of DNA, of the crystalline body, to liberate the consciousness of ourselves and all of humanity. This is a super big deal. So before I talk about Alpheratz as the star that is informing both of these events and the ancient constellation that it's a part of, I'm just going to stop my share. And if there's anything coming up for anyone around what's happening with these activations, please feel free to speak up. Is anybody getting any ahas, or does anyone have any questions around any of that?
Well, I don't have a question, but I was looking at, oh God, what is it called? The trine across, you know, you've got part of a kite in there, the top part of the kite. And it meets up at where the eclipse is, I think, if I remember right.
It meets up at the gate activation.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay. And so it is a breakthrough in consciousness. And if you, from my perspective, if you look at it as for all of humanity, it's like the spearhead, the arrowhead pointing and going, and it's going to break through whatever barriers it has to break through. That's the only thing that caught my attention.
Absolutely. Gina, that's phenomenal. I would agree with that. Absolutely, I would agree with that. Because let me go back to that to show you what Gina's pointing to. Hold on a second. She's pointing to the Venus gate here. If this were a kite, we would have, we would have a grand air trine, something down here, but we don't. But if it were a kite, this would be the top of the kite. And these points here would be the spiritual gifts that would come to fruition from this kite. But you see here, you've got Pluto here. Pluto is potent. Pluto is going to allow that breakthrough because of the alchemy involved. And Maureen can speak to this. That's going to be happening. We've completed one whole cycle of the 7 steps of alchemy, and we're starting again with the Earth Star Chakra, going through that calcination stage. But you're right. What's happening in the sky is a kind of grace for humanity to liberate humanity's consciousness. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share around that? Maureen, I can't hear you, honey.
There. Okay. All right. My work with the Egyptian tarot, which I use as just further, to explain what energies we're working with. It came out with the suffering of humanity. That was a big part. And I wasn't even going to talk about that because I didn't want to talk about suffering. But then I looked at I Am the Open Door. And the discourse that came up for this time, for this timing, was eight, the goddess of grace. And when I read it, it made total sense because it talks about human suffering. The collective has bought totally into this suffering, and we see it everywhere. There isn't anybody who hasn't felt this. And this timing and what's coming up around it is protection, is consciousness opening. It is a huge humanity step forward. And so one of the things we are countering is the idea that humanity must suffer in order to grow. And that's no longer the rule. We don't have to. We know that now. But it is a big thing in the world, and this is giving us the tools, I think, to counter that, and begin to change the collective consciousness. Now, I said before that the ascent, the underworld and the ascent, is going to be an octave higher than we've experienced. It's going to be more available to go out and heal some of this collective fear and suffering. And so I'm really glad once again that alchemy and the Sophia Christ consciousness are in alignment and showing us the way. So that I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Maureen. And I know that the ladies that are here today recognize this, but anybody watching this may not recognize this, that
Yep.
When Maureen and I put these presentations together, we do them independently. We do not touch base with each other. And it's been fascinating to see month after month how what Maureen is coming up with and what I'm being guided to share, it absolutely supports each other in terms of what we're receiving and completely dovetails together in a very beautiful way.
Yep, a perfect Leo goddess journey.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to share around the aspects in the sky today for this gate activation? Okie dokie. I'm going to go back to the slides, and we're going to look at this star and its constellation. So Alpheratz is in the Andromeda Constellation. Again, remember, this is informing tomorrow's eclipse as well. This is quite a synchronicity because this same constellation was informing the very first eclipse on the Aries Libra eclipse axis that happened last April 2023. A different star from this constellation was informing that eclipse. It was not the Alpheratz star, but this is the thing that's so potent about this constellation that just really excited me when we started the Christ Heart Mentorship Program and looked at that first eclipse last year. This Andromeda constellation contains the Andromeda galaxy, right? Remember, we're in the Milky Way galaxy. It contains this other galaxy that is 2.5 million light years away from us, which happens to be the nearest full-fledged galaxy to our own. And so what that demonstrated to me is because, you know, really primarily our playground is the Milky Way galaxy. Although I have said our heart and our Christ heart is connected directly to our sun, the heart of our solar system, which they are directly connected to the galactic center, which is the heart of the Milky Way galaxy. And the three of them are connected to the heart of the great central sun, which is the heart of Sophia Christ. Now, all of these other galaxies out there, they have galactic centers that are heart centers, which also feed into this heart-to-heart network. And so what I can see from this, or what I saw last year with that first eclipse, in which is happening again now, going back to the grace, and I love that you spoke to the goddess of grace, and I think it was the February gate activation where I spoke to the three graces or the three virtues. I don't remember the exact language coming in at that time. This evolutionary leap that we are being realigned to through these eclipses is not just about our galaxy. We are getting support from the whole flippin' cosmos. And cosmos is my word for a multi-galactic, because galaxy and universe are the same, multi-universe space of all that is. I mean, this is huge. So if you think about what Maureen just shared in terms of all of the light codes from everything outside of the Milky Way galaxy coming in to support us through this breakthrough in consciousness, right? This leap in consciousness. It's really mind-blowing. But of course, that's what you would expect with Pluto and Aquarius being those higher spheres, and all of that empowerment coming in to transform us into the highest vibrational set point that each of us individually have the capacity to hold within us. So here's the constellation Andromeda in its stars, and here's Alpheratz. That's the star that is informing us. And what I love about this star is that it has to do with regeneration. Regeneration is a key word for Pluto. And so there are all of these civilizations that have learned all of these techniques around how to regenerate themselves in a way that they don't have to go through the death process. That's where humanity is going in terms of our ascension process. That's what all of the ascended masters, including Yeshua, have done. They've been able to regenerate or resurrect themselves without having a death process, and they stay living as eternal beings. And all of these other galactic civilizations that have been learning this have created a library of this knowledge that is stored on Alpheratz and that can be found on some other stars around Alpheratz. And so you, with your own consciousness, can choose to travel to Alpheratz and access those libraries. I would imagine, I'm not an Akashic reader. I'll let Gina speak to that. She's an Akashic reader, and I think Karen is too. I'll let them speak to that. I would imagine it's much like being an Akashic reader. You're sending your consciousness to this star, to this library to access the knowledge in those regeneration technique libraries. But the big takeaway for me here is that the light frequencies coming to us today, tomorrow, I mean, they've been coming to us, I think over the past week. I don't remember the exact window for this star's influence, but definitely today and tomorrow, is that our pineal gland is being regenerated so that we can have this higher awareness, and so that we can have an awareness of Christ consciousness. Remember what I showed you in the aspects. Yeshua making that square to the gate. Breakthrough in consciousness, a breakthrough in consciousness to be able to access your own Christ consciousness. Karen and Gina, as Akashic readers, can you speak to how that process would work in terms of using your consciousness to access those regenerative technique libraries on Alpheratz?
I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm not either, because when I don't know about how Karen does her stuff, but when I'm doing that, I've always asked, I have a guide that helps me to read someone's record, because that's a very private thing. I don't really know how to answer that, but I would imagine that if the person really wants to do that and is wanting to grow and learn those skills, or that the set that she's, skill set, they could ask for permission to do that and access it. I mean, we all have access to all of that, but other than, it's not something I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, if it were me and I were going to suggest to anybody how to do that, I always go back to my own Sophia Christ presence. And so that's one way you could start. You could ask your inner divine self for permission and to help you access that technology, to receive the knowledge around that technology.
I guess it boils, for me, from what I'm understanding you're saying, is it boils down to the person's willingness to hear what they need to hear, what they need to learn. I mean, a lot of us are willing to learn, but a lot of us don't listen and hear what's being communicated to us from, you know, those people, those beings who are at that crystalline level already. That's just from my perspective.
And that's a valid perspective. And so I would say if there are people out there like that, that what I could recommend is, one, if you think that maybe that's you, set an intention. My intention is to clearly receive this knowledge. And I am calling on whoever your guides are or your own divine self to help raise my frequency so that I can hear the frequency of the knowledge that's being transmitted to me. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to speak to or ask about regarding the frequencies of Alpheratz specifically, or the Andromeda constellation? Okay, I'll go back to the slides. So I already mentioned that that it's no coincidence. I mean, it may look like a coincidence, but it's no coincidence that today's gate activation, tomorrow's eclipse, is happening within a very close window of the linear date that is celebrated as Easter on our planet. And that's because of this huge theme around resurrecting the Christ consciousness within us. This is what's going to be happening through this Inanna underworld journey. And so I sent out a newsletter for Easter, and I provided a link to a video by Dr. Justin Sledge, and I'll put the link below, called The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Salvation Through Self-Knowledge of the Soul and Mind. And he lists several resources for the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. He happened to mention that this is his favorite resource, and I just so happen to have that resource in my library. So of course I got it out and started looking through it. And I love what he has to say in his video, because he's telling us that the message of Yeshua that was shared with Mary Magdalene after his resurrection were teachings around the ascent of the soul. We call that the ascension here in the West, the ascension process. This, you know, I know the ascension, it may for many people feel like a new age concept, but you know, Mary Magdalene's teachings are from her gospel are thousands of years old. This is not a new concept. There may be new language around it, but it's not a new concept. And it's something that humanity has always been doing. There are many, many ascended masters. There are many, many yogis, or whatever you want to call them, that have taken on their rainbow body, right? That eternal transcendent light body. And what he talks about in here, this video, is he talks about the 7 powers of wrath, and they're also known as demonic gatekeepers. I find that interesting because this is all coming up as we're going into the underworld. And of course, the underworld tends to be associated with gatekeepers through the Inanna myth, right? Inanna's descent into the underworld, going through the gates, and, with the demonic gatekeepers as well. So it's very interesting how these ideas are kind of coming together. And these are the 7 powers of wrath. And they talk about in the Gospel of Mary, specifically here. I mean, you can read it in the Gospel in part 1 on page 16. And then Mary or Karen King, the author, she talks about it in chapter 8 called The Rise of the Soul, starting at page 69. And the idea is you get past these earthly or human gates and your soul is free. So if you haven't seen this video, I encourage you, because it's fascinating. It does tie into what's happening with this gate activation and what will be happening in the Inanna world. And if you're interested in this book, I find it to be a good resource, as well as Dr. Sledge. It'll give you more teachings specifically from the Magdalene around this process. Now, there is a part from the Magdalene Gospel that is in the book that I just showed you, and it's on page 16, where Mary Magdalene asks Yeshua a question. And his answer is, a person does not see with the soul or the spirit, rather the mind, which exists between these two, sees the vision, because she was talking to him about a vision she had had. This very much reminds me of this I am image that has been shared through the Saint Germain teachings. And so soul and spirit, I don't know what your definition of soul and spirit is, but one of them's up here and one of them's down here. And then right in between, you've got that higher mind. That's the buddhi, the intellect. And it's through the higher mind that you have these visions. And isn't it fascinating that Alpheratz is sending us light frequencies to regenerate the pineal gland, which essentially is, from what I understand, and if anybody understands anything different, please feel free to speak up, is basically the quote unquote third eye, which is connected to the higher mind, that allows us to see those visions. So that's fascinating. And then I love this because, we know that this ascension process can be done after the physical death, but it doesn't have to be done through physical death. And it's telling us in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene that the zeal for death, which is right here, that's this power, has nothing to do with true salvation. That the salvation occurs when the mind, right here, grasps the reality that the inner self, right, your inner divine flame, is your eternal soul. I love that the Gospel of Mary Magdalene speaks to this. I love that Yeshua was sharing these teachings with her, and they're documented in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And I love that even Dr. Justin Sledge recognizes that that's what these teachings are about. And of course, that's what's happening with us as we're making this bridge into our crystalline temple and the higher octaves of the crystalline temple. We're going to be able to start really accessing this higher mind. Now, there is an ascended master by the name of Violet Tara, And she told me that invoking her and using her practices is going to be the way for us to make the best use of this Inanna underworld journey. If you don't have these books and you don't want to buy these books, that's okay, because there are these videos that I will put the link to in the description below. Peter Mount Shasta talks about invoking the violet fire, and then, which I think would be the first go through if you're not going to get the books. And then in this second video, again, he talks about Violet Tara, how Saint Germain asked him to write the books on Violet Tara. And at a certain point, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes within, he takes you through a violet fire meditation, which is essentially what he calls the short version of what's in the Violet Tara books. I plan to, and I highly recommend anyone that is going to consciously engage the Inanna underworld journey to use this violet fire meditation every day. And so if you want to know what the essential purpose of the violet fire is, it is a light frequency, a fire that purifies, right? What is purification? It's the alchemical process. And in this alchemical process of using this violet fire, what you are doing is you are dissolving and consuming anything that is less than perfection, which most people identify as their quote unquote karma. And by dissolving and consuming that karma, by dissolving and consuming anything less than perfection, it allows you to take a significant leap in frequency towards your ascension process. So that's what I will be doing through the Inanna underworld journey, and I invite you to join me as well. Okay, let's look at the Inanna underworld schedule. Here's tomorrow, April 8th. We're going to have that solar eclipse. 3 days later, we're having a Mercury Inferior Conjunction in Aries. Remember, a Mercury Inferior Conjunction happens in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. It is the most potent, most alchemical point of the entire Mercury Mercury synodic cycle. Okay, 16 days later, Venus descends into the underworld at 28 degrees of Aries. Look at everything that's happening in Aries, preparing us for this descent into the underworld in Aries. So we've got the Venus gate today on the 7th. We've got the solar eclipse tomorrow on the 8th. 3 days later, we've got the Mercury Inferior Conjunction. We are being prepared in a way for this purification of the Inanna underworld in a manner in which I do not have any recollection of in any of the other Inanna underworld journeys that I have consciously engaged. And I'm going to just stop the share here and ask Maureen. Maureen, do you remember this kind of cosmic support coming to prepare us for that descent?
No, I certainly don't. And my experience with that event has showed that. I think that there were things that we had to go through in order to get here. And so now that we are ready, we're going to have all the support we need.
Yeah.
We've been through the fire. We have. And so now we can work at a higher level with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And I love how you say we've been through the fire, because of course, Aries as a sign is a fire element sign. So,
Yes, and it also purifies.
yep.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we're a lot further along
Yeah.
than we ever have been.
I
Yes.
mean, I'm absolutely blown away by all of the pieces coming together that are refining us at a deeper and deeper level before we even go into the Inanna underworld.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's going to be a very different experience for us, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let me go back to the schedule, and I invite each of you to print this slide off so you can put the schedule up. Because although the resurrection seed point doesn't happen until June, which is when we're going to activate that 22nd strand, next month, May, between now and that resurrection seed point, we will be gathering, as we did in the past, to have a little support group for each other while we're going through this underworld experience, to do some shadow dancing. And we will do that again in July, because the next gate activation doesn't happen until August. Okay, so after we do the shadow dancing piece in July, then Venus will rise as the evening star, but her first gate activation as the evening star, which will happen at the root chakra, doesn't happen until August. So I encourage you to print that off for your own references. All right, so that brings us into the alchemical teachings that Maureen is going to be sharing with us. As I said earlier, we have already completed these first 7 steps in one cycle. And now we're starting again with calcination. And where that's going to show up is here at the Earth Star Chakra. So last month we did this final 7th step of alchemy at the crown chakra, but now that's been gone through the full 7 steps, it kind of drops off. And here we are at the Earth Star Chakra with calcination, which means that now the root chakra is at dissolution, the sacral chakra is at separation, the heart chakra is at conjunction, the solar plexus is at conjunction, the heart chakra is at fermentation, the throat is at distillation, and now the third eye is at coagulation. Isn't it fascinating that the third eye is at the 7th step, and we're receiving those frequencies from Alpheratz to regenerate the third eye so that we can receive the philosopher's stone for the third eye, which is what? To be able to have the visions of the higher mind. And so, Maureen, from here, take it away.
Okay. Okay, first slide. Thank you. I found this picture of alchemy, a lab, a man in his lab, and it was just so interesting to me. It is so different than anything I've ever seen in the art world about alchemist. I just loved it. It was on a website called High Existence, and this was from an article of Eric Brown. I don't know if that's his website or he just contributes, whatever. It was wonderful. So I wanted to share this graphic of the alchemist at work and all the different ways that he's engaging the steps. I just thought it was so fun, a really fun one to watch. So here we are, step 8. And yeah, there is a step 8 in alchemy, although it is not publicized in most of the books. We've come full circle. We are now back to where we started. The first step and the 8th step are actually on the same ray of the Azoth. And the 7th ray, or the first ray and the 8th are included in the same ray. And the ray points to a cube, and that is labeled corpus or body. The 5 stars surrounding the cube are the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water, plus what they call one hidden element. We arrive here at the Earth Star Chakra as an embodiment of the 5th star, the 5th element, or what we know it is: the Sophia Christ consciousness, the I am presence, the philosopher's stone. We have come full circle, as I said, and now what happens, we go around again, but we're going to go around on a higher octave. We never stop. The learning from this is continual, and things open up as you work with the program, if you work with the steps, if you work with this particular illustration, the Azoth. The A and the Z in Azoth actually represent the Alpha and the Omega. This is where it starts, and this is where it ends. And then it starts again. And that was the part of the Azoth I wanted to bring to your awareness today, is that we are embodied at the 8th gate, the Earth Star Chakra, and we are ready to move on fully embodied with our I am presence. Are there any questions about where we are with this gate? No? Okay. Okay. Then we're going to go on to a review where everybody is. Okay. Where are the chakras? The 3rd eye chakra, step 7, is at coagulation. Matter and spirit meet. The inner and outer are at peace. We no longer see our environment as polarities. Our perception, intuition is perfected. We are aware of our second body of solid gold light. I got to get this thing out of the way. I can't read my slides there. Okay, the pituitary gland and the pineal gland are aligned and create the viaticum, the food for the journey. The emerald tablet correspondence for this step is: thus you will obtain the glory of the whole universe. All obscurity will be clear to you. This is the greatest force of all powers, because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. The throat chakra, step 6, is at distillation. What has formed from fermentation is brought to a boil. It rises, condenses, then returns to earth and this pure process purifies the substance. We must check in with ourselves to recognize any destructive forms that the ego wants to hang on to. This stage is called the mother of the stone. It nourishes the new consciousness through contemplation, spiritual ritual, and meditation. The butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, warms its wings in the sun's warmth, and prepares for flight. That's the throat chakra. Boy, did I have a issue with that this month. My throat was so sore and I was coughing and I couldn't talk. And so my throat chakra was really talking to me for clarity. Okay, the emerald tablet correspondence for this step is it rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining within itself the powers of both the above and below. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, the heart chakra is at step 5, fermentation. Element is fire, but a far gentler fire than calcination. Sometimes this is called the secret fire. It is a 2-step process. First, putrefaction. What we perceived as opposite or internal conflicts in conjunction, our self as we know it is no longer available to us. We have let go of so much and we come to the melting of our old form. In order to become something new, the old must die. We have recognized and held the polarities within us, and now we bring them together for purification. Once we begin the meltdown and surrender to the process, we will ferment into something beautiful and whole, our integrated self. The caterpillar's old form is broken down and becomes something new. It doesn't need to know what is going on, what it looks like. It trusts the process, and indeed there is no stopping it. The heart allows itself to become soft and vulnerable. Emerald tablet correspondence: separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, gently and with great ingenuity. The solar plexus chakra is at step 4, conjunction. The element is earth. The unconscious and the conscious come together in a mutual awareness. We see where we have internally held conflicting components in the form of core beliefs and a lens of perfection which hasn't been true to our authentic self. We see where we have been a product of our programming. We realize where we have handed our power over to others. We hold space for these conflicts without feeling the need to fix them at this point. This represents a point of freedom. Emerald tablet correspondence: its nurse is the earth. Okay, the sacral chakra is at step 3, separation, element of air. We filter and separate out the products of dissolution that no longer serve us. We invite into our consciousness that which has been hidden from our awareness due to denial and resistance. This is what makes us stronger. The process requires us to be honest with ourselves. We look for traits that have held us back, and what stories we have told ourselves, what stories we need to discard or rewrite. We may have to change some habits and deal with emotions and memories and stories others have told us about ourselves. We picture throwing all that comes up here into a centrifuge, and as it spins fast, it throws out all that is no longer needed or wanted. What's left will move on to the next step. The emerald tablet correspondence is the wind carries it in its belly. Okay, the root chakra is at step 2, dissolution, element, water. We take the ashes from calcination and further purify with water. Water is considered the universal solvent. We enter the waters of the unconscious to find the parts of ourselves buried there. Our emotional pain, our trauma, where we have disassociated to protect ourselves. We no longer need that protection. We face our fear and thank it for helping us get us through difficult events in our lives. We realize that we have the power to deal with them now and find equanimity. The emerald tablet correspondence is its mother, is the moon. And the Earth Star Chakra is step 1, calcination. The element is fire. This is where the crown is now. We begin to break down our attachments to our worldly belongings. We look for unimportant things that feed our ego, like wealth, to gain power, fame, prestige. We use our internal fire to burn our attachment to them. Write them down and burn them. May we have the courage to burn what is false. The emerald tablet correspondence is its father is the sun. Okay, this is kind of like living backwards a little bit because we start at one point and then as we go through it, each step relies on the one that comes before in order to and to find fruition. And that's a different way of looking at it. But it is important at this point to realize that each step requires the work of the previous one. Okay. All right. I wanted to share with you this prayer by Dennis William. Oh, I got it. That's H, shouldn't be a G, it's Hauk. That he wrote. And it encompasses all of the process of alchemy. I use this graph from the Mutus Liber, which was published in 1677, because it really is at the step of separation. But I like it because the alchemist and his or her adept are praying. And I think that and that many of them did pray before they began their process. The alchemist prayer. O most singular and unspeakable presence, first and last in the universe, heighten the fury of my fire and turn away the dross of my being. Cleanse my soul, my soiled soul. Bathe me in your awesome light. Set me free from my past. Cut me loose from my boundaries. Unite me with the one thing hidden in my life, wherein is my only strength. Fill me with your presence. Allow me to see through your eye. Grant me entry to your mind. Let me resonate with your sacred will. Make me transparent to your flame. And fashion me into a lens for your light only. Transmute me into an incorruptible stone in your eternal service, like the golden light that surrounds you. So it is, and it is so, and I give thanks. Okay, that's where we are. And congratulations to all of you for doing the work to get here, the internal work. It has been a major journey, major work. And I thank you all for your attention to this and what you have accomplished, and that you have listened to what is being presented. That means so much to me. And again, thank you, all of you. And congratulations again on this arriving. Hmm.
I like that poem. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yes. Hmm.
Thanks for speaking to that, Karen, because I would myself was going to say, what a synchronicity that you included the alchemist prayer, because exactly what the alchemist is praying for is precisely what the violet fire does. I
Yes.
mean,
And
what an amazing
exactly.
synchronicity.
And I think it's really important. Yeah, it is amazing. Now that the crown is in calcination again at the Earth Star Chakra, it would be really, really good to invoke the violet fire and use that to burn what comes up here for us. You never know what's going to come up, and all of a sudden, it could be another chakra. You know, you have to kind of, oh, where's this? Where's this? Okay, this is the throat chakra, and where is that in the process? And that kind of guides you how to deal with it and what is happening at that point. And yeah, it gets a little bit busy having all the chakras engaged.
It's like
But
spinning a bunch of plates, isn't it? Because
it
each
is
chakra is at a different step and they're all working you.
all working it. And the heart chakra is where this all will land when we're done. It will, the heart, the completed philosopher's stone for this journey will reside in the heart.
Yeah. Yeah. I also liked what you shared on the calcination step with the Earth Star Chakra, because to me, that sounded very much like what's in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene around these 7 powers of wrath, because it's about separating what the lower human egoic self is keeping you bound by.
Mm-hmm.
That's what those 7
Absolutely.
powers of wrath are related
Yeah.
to.
Yes. What? How many demons were cast out of Mary Magdalene in the old story? Do you remember? Was it 7?
I don't know.
I can't remember either, but there was a lot. That's the old story.
Does anybody have any questions for Maureen about what she's shared, where we are in the alchemical process, or anything that you've been personally experiencing that you'd like some clarity on? Okay, well, thank you for that, Maureen.
Yeah. I would just like to share a little bit about my experience at the root chakra
Go ahead.
with the crown. And uh, it brought up one of the biggest issues of my generation, which was the Vietnam War. I think I was like 14 or 15 when it got going. And in 1964, Kennedy was gone, and President Johnson was escalating the war. My own father was reenacted. His unit was reenacted. He was a pilot in World War II, and he was a transport pilot in his reserve unit. So they reenacted his unit, and he had to fly, or he did fly, big transport planes to Vietnam with supplies. And so he was gone from the time I was maybe 15, 16, until he retired. He would come home once in a while because he was stationed just 2 hours from us. But he had an apartment up there because he needed to be on call. He was at the top of he was lieutenant colonel. He was in command, and so he had to be there all the time. And I didn't get to see him, and I never even thought about that until this came up, how much that changed my life. As a teenager, my male role model was gone. And I had this picture of him as a World War II pilot, and I knew a bit about that, and he was my hero. And so that brought me to a hate I still held in my heart for hippies. And this hippie movement was so contrary to the war, which we all became that way. We all felt that the war was not necessary, not good. But they had a different way of dealing with it. The hippies, they were called the doves. They just put flowers in their hair and danced around and got high on LSD or whatever, and had such negative feelings for the soldiers that were called. This was the draft. They had no choice. They had to go. And some of them went to Canada to escape that. Jimmy Carter pardoned them so they could come home. And that was another problem, because so many of them answered the call and died. So many of them answered the call and were changed forever. And they got sick from the chemicals. It was a terrible, terrible time. And so I had this hatred for half my generation because of the way they treated the soldiers, my friends, my father. My boyfriend was over there. I mean, there was no way that I could go against what they were doing. So I became what they called a hawk. I wasn't pro-war, I was pro-soldier. And I think that's the biggest lesson that came out of that whole mess, the Vietnam War, was that we have to respect a person who is called to duty. They had no choice, but they answered, they went, and many died. So I was working with that, trying to find forgiveness in my heart for half my generation for what they did, and half the generation that kept hawkish, the other half. So it was a real tough time. And I used the Ho'oponopono prayer quite a bit, and that helped. And so my root chakra was just really burning. I was calcinating all these things that came up. And, sometimes you expect this, and then other times it hits you unaware, like you didn't realize that you knew you had this problem, that it was even still a problem. So I had to work with that. And that's what my root chakra experience was all about. And I just wanted to share with you how intense it was. And that's why I said it was kind of a tough month. Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you for holding the space for all of the people of your generation, whether they were doves or hawks, and especially if they are feeling like you do, because as you allow the space for that to come up, it gives permission to all of them to heal as well. And that's a huge hit at the root chakra, which is where we are supposed to feel safe. And when your father, your hero, is absent, there are probably a lot of safety issues that you were unconscious of during that period of time that very likely were coming up as well. I don't know if you're aware of any of those. But you may become aware of them now at the Earth Star Chakra. They might have been more deeply rooted. And it's curious for me, have you given any thought to how all of that, because it's going to go, that is going to go through the 7 steps. Have you given any thought to how that might, or how it was, or may even now be showing up through the sacral chakra, which is at the 3rd step, which is
Creation.
Excuse me?
Portal of creation.
No,
Separation. The step
that
is
separation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you given
right.
any thought to how that might be starting to show up, or how it might possibly show up for you related to that topic?
You know, I really haven't started to think about that yet, but yeah, you're right that that is exactly what will happen. This issue that I have, that I've been working on so hard, will go through the steps, and so I can see where it's blocked creativity, and understanding my place in the world. We were a world of families then. There were very traditional families, you know, fathers and mothers and kids and dogs, 2 cars, patio, the whole, you know, 50s, 60s view of life. And I was kind of alone. My mom and I, we were, it was like she was a single mother, you know. She raised me through my teen years pretty much by herself. So yeah, I can see that there's a lot going to come up. And
Well, thank you for having the courage to speak to it and share it with us.
thank you. I
'Cause
appreciate your
I can
support.
feel the weight of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel it very strongly all the way down from my throat chakra on, you know. It affected every part of my life, and I just didn't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share around Maureen's experience or your own experience with the alchemical process? Okay. Are you feeling complete, Maureen? Because I don't want to rush
Yes,
you.
no, I'm fine. I just wanted to put that out in the field, and thank you for your support. I am now dealing. Takes a long time to get to these things, doesn't it?
Yeah, I will share that, I was born in 63, January, so before Kennedy was assassinated. So I was a year old when your frame of reference, when all of that was going on. Of course, I was oblivious to all of that. I don't even know how any of that impacted my family life. I have some vague awareness that the Korean War was going on in close proximity to the Vietnam War because my own birth father was sent off to Korea. But other than that, I really don't have a consciousness around how it impacted my personal family. I really don't. No one in my family has talked about it. And I don't have any family members that I'm aware of that were sent to Vietnam. So
Yes. Yeah.
it feels like a disconnect for me, even though I was on the planet at the time. I guess that's what I'm trying to speak to.
Sure. I think it would, to most generations. Maybe not our kids, my kids, and that generation. Many of them had dads, who were Vietnam vets. And incidentally, if you haven't, if you get a chance to see the Vietnam Memorial,
I've seen it.
it's in Washington, D.C., but they do have a traveling one that goes around every once in a while so that you can experience it. It's very, very powerful monument. Oh my gosh, it is just incredibly powerful. And you can feel a little bit, you don't want to touch it too much, but you can feel a little bit of the heaviness of that time. All the names, every single name of those that died is on that wall.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Impressive.
I was there. It's a lot. To the other thing that we talked about earlier, just a bit ago, there were 7 demons that were exorcised for Mary Magdalene.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Seven,
Mhm.
seven wrath. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It occurs to me for anyone present or watching that would like to be in service to humanity through this gate activation. We know that area is being activated in the sky and through the Inanna underworld, that this whole consciousness, the suffering, the wounding that is still ongoing from what happened, what has been ignored, what has been denied, would be a beautiful service at the collective level to purify with the violet fire, because I think that that would help with a tremendous breakthrough in consciousness for humanity to have a focus there. And I know I will incorporate it in my practice. You may want to, Maureen, not only for your own personal reasons, but it may also help you escalate the alchemical process of that for you so that you're not getting bogged down in the steps of it. You can kind of like fast track it.
That's a good idea.
But because of the fact that the collective consciousness is such a big part of this gate activation, it would be a huge service to humanity if some of us, and I will, were to take that on to cleanse and purify that from the collective.
I think that would be wonderful. Yes. And I think it needs to be done. It just, the world responded to World War II so differently. They were the heroes. Everybody welcomed them home. It was exciting, the war to be over. And when the Vietnam vets came home, they were booed, spit on, called names. It was horrible. It was horrible. And the Vietnam War is really the first war where we had embedded, they call it embedded foreign correspondence. So people were from the news were actually embedded within the different companies that were fighting, and so they could report. And as news will do, it reported on all the negative things, all the terrible things, and so we had a glimpse of that side of war. Whereas World War II, it was glory. It was John Wayne and Robert Mitchum and those strong male actors and strong military roles, and it was just a lot different. So I think that a lot of the World War II people had problems coming home. I'm not saying it was easy for them, but Vietnam was a whole different experience.
Plus,
It was.
didn't they use chemical warfare in Vietnam that they hadn't used before?
That's exactly right, because it was a jungle and they had to try to kill all the plants
That was
that were
Agent
growing.
Orange.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and Agent Orange.
Mhm.
And so many of them got sick from it.
I know I had an uncle who was a medevac pilot,
Oh, okay.
and he died from cancer from Agent Orange, and they denied his claim for many years because he wasn't in battle per se, but
Mm-hmm.
he's handling these people when they're picking up the casualties and what have you. And you're right. And the Vietnam War was the very first war that came into our kitchens and living rooms. That was
Exactly.
a whole different thing. We didn't see that in World War II.
No.
You didn't. I mean, you had news people obviously, but they were writing, and it was all that appeared in the newspaper. But now the Vietnam War was on the television. It was on the news every evening. And so, yeah, that was very different. And I've known people who actually did. They came home and they spat on them when they
And
came
I
home.
mean,
Very different.
it's so different and unbelievable. Unbelievable. There was no support at all. Well, there was from half of us, but the other half was more visible.
Okay, well, thank you for all of this incredible sharing. And I'm going to go back to the slides and remind you of where we are with this current Mercury synodic cycle. As I mentioned, we're having that inferior conjunction coming up next week, next Thursday on the 11th, right? 3 days. Not next week, this week, sorry. This coming Thursday, right? The 11th, 3 days after tomorrow's solar eclipse. And remember that this is the albedo stage. And in terms of the hero's journey, it has to do with an initiation. I mean, think about everything that I've shared with you. The Easter themes, the regeneration, resurrection themes, this jumping off from the death by intent into the Inanna underworld theme, and just contemplate for yourself what comes into your awareness on that day. And remember, this has a 3-day window. So 10th, 11th, 12th, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What's coming into your awareness around the themes that we've discussed today that you're experiencing as an initiation related to the resurrection of your inner Christ? So that's what I would leave you there with. We've had a lot of questions and answers. Does anybody have any question that hasn't been voiced yet that they'd like to squeeze in here before we move on? All right, so I do want to remind you that the next strand of DNA will be activated on June 4th at the resurrection seed point in the Inanna underworld, and that we will be doing that ceremony on June 2nd. But we will be meeting next month, May, for our shadow dancing. So that's why I encourage you to print off that previous slide. So at this point, I'm going to stop the share, and we are going to take our crystals. And does anybody need a few minutes to prepare their crystal? I can pause the recording if you need like 5 minutes, or are you ready to drop right into this?
Ready to go.
Okay. So everybody's activated their crystal. They've programmed it with their intent to bring the 21st strand of DNA online. Okay. All right. So let's drop into our Christ heart first. We're going to start there. 3 slow inhales, 6 slow exhales. Just do a cycle of 3. Okay, and with your activated crystal, you want to direct the Christ end of your crystal towards the palm of the opposite hand. You want to pulse the eye of your crystal so that you can feel that divine love frequency coming from the crystal. And you'll feel it in the palm of the opposite hand. That divine love frequency carries the intent to bring that 21st strand of DNA activation online between your divine template and your physical body. It's reconnecting them, it's repairing them, it's regenerating them, and it's bringing it online. And as you pulse that eye of your crystal, you'll feel that divine love frequency, kind of like a laser in the palm of your hand, accessing your quantum field. And it's embedding that program into the quantum field. So take as long as you need until you feel complete with that process of embedding the program, allowing the program to come online within you, within your quantum field. And when you're complete, just drop back into your Christ heart and ask your Sophia Christ, is there anything around this 21st strand of DNA that Sophia Christ wants you to be aware of? Very gently, when you're ready, you can come back to where you are. And does anybody have anything they'd like to share? Any messages that they received that they'd like to share from Sophia? Okay. So at this point, I just like to thank everybody for being present and thank everybody that has watched the replay of this video. And we will see everybody in June, but we will be meeting privately in May. So from my heart to yours, take very good care of yourself until then.